Today's daf is daf Chof Daled. We are in the middle of the sugya of Chanina, and he came along and said we have two axioms in halacha. One is called roiv, probability, and one is karev, which is neighborly. And he said that roiv overrides karev. Roiv overrides karev. And we asked the question from our Mishnah that we look at the close of Chigub. We said our Mishnah is talking about that the birds are hopping, and when they're hopping, then obviously it came from a place. It cannot go more than a distance greater than 50 amos. So obviously it came from the one that's within the 50 amos. So let's continue the Gemara. It says the Gemara, 4 lines from the top of the page. Amar Abai. Abai says, Afanana mitanina. Abai wants to support Rav Chanina that Roiv supersedes Karev. The way Rashi describes here the structure of the internal organs of a woman, in practice speaking, I remember seeing many that were discussing it, how exactly it fits in with what we know today. But the bottom line, the way Rashi learns the structure of a woman is, so you have the uterus, which stores all the blood. Then you have the canal in front, which is called the proisdor, like the corridor. That's where all the blood comes out. But there's also a chamber above, where there's blood there, but that blood generally doesn't come out unless there's a scratch or something that causes the blood to come out. But the chamber above is closer to the canal than the uterus, which is behind. It's in the recess. It's recessed. And if you find blood in the corridor, we'll say the woman is tameh, because we'll say it probably came from the uterus, from the rechem. Even though, why? Because the right blood is found in the uterus. But the karev is the chamber, the aliyah above. And there she would be tired. And yet we pass when she's tummy. What does that show? That the Raiv is stronger than Karev. That's what Abai's Rai is. After we learn, damn blood shenim to be praised. You found blood in the canal. Sveika, if you're not sure where the blood came from, tummy, you will assume it came from the uterus. Let's say it wasn't the time of a period, anything else. She's tummy. We assume it came from the makkah. Even though the chamber above is closer, so maybe it came from there and the blood is tired, yet we follow Rav. That's what Abaye said. At the moment, we don't know anybody who argues Rav Chanina. This is just what we have. This is not the stam Rav. This is not only that the Rav is more blood housed in the uterus than there's a blood in the chamber, but more than that, it constantly keeps on flowing out. There's periods and everything else. So it's a Rav and a Motzah. There are two factors over here, and that is why we say we trace the blood back to the Makar. There's nobody who would argue about Rav and Makar. Most Rishonim are not great as di, with a di which sounds like Rab Chia is going to be a support to this, because Rab Chia doesn't even talk about this. But what he's saying here is as follows. Rab Chia learned, dam hanimtze beproiz. We found dam in the canal, right? So there's a suffix, and we attribute it to the makar. How far do we take it? This is just part of support of Abaya as well. Chayovin, it doesn't prove anything about moti. It proves more the concept that roiv is so strong that's like a vadai. Here the Rebbe is like a vade, because you don't burn truma unless you know you have truma that if it came tummy, we say toilet if you don't know. But if it's vade, then you burn it. You don't burn truma otherwise. Not burn truma. And yet it's a dam and into the praise of chayov lo abism mikdash. If you walk by will be chayiv and the sofer loves the truma. What does that prove? That this probability is that strong. We treat it like a vade. It doesn't in any way support the rubber that because of Rav and Motzi. So therefore, instead of saying did tani, that because it's not really supporting Rav, just the idea that let's actually support Chanina, that a Rav is so strong that it's like a vadai. Rav says, Shmam Rav Chia, we learn 3 different Rav Chia. Shmam, first of all, we learned that the Rav, the Karev, Alechach Rav. They want to go after the Rav, because we go after the Makkah. We say it's tummy. We don't say it came from the Ali and the blood is tired. Number 1. Number 2, Shmam no Ruba that I said. But we wouldn't burn Truma unless the Torah says so. Says that Rav is from the Torah. And the third thing is Ushmamina Isa Lidrabzeda. This is a sugya that we had in the end of the first page in Ksubas, and the sugya over there in Chul. If you know, we have about Rav, and we say you have 9 stores that sell kosher meat and 1 store that sells treifa meat. And benimtza, if you found the meat in the street, you go after the Rav. Let's go to the closest store. Is that Rav is stronger than Karev? But there the Gemara talks about that maybe you need 2 factors, 2 Ravs, because we talked about a woman, but if someone raped, whatever it is, who was it? A goy, a yid. We look at the people, locals, we look at people abroad, and we said that the people around there are the Yidden as well. What happens if the gates of the city are closed? So there's only 1 Rav. Is 1 Rav strong enough, or you need 2 Ravs? And people are mutter to her. And over here also. So when you have 9 stores, do you need also the stores, the walls of the city open so that you have the rave, the local cities, also the rave of the people that around the surrounding area are also Yiddish people who are, keep kosher. So you have 2 raves. Come along and says, Alpha Pisha Thousand in Nullahs. Yes, no, you don't need 2 raves. 1 rave is sufficient. Even the doors, the gates of the city are closed. Now here the supports Abzeda. How? Because we're going after rave here, and the blood can only come from internally. It cannot come from external sources. It says like the doors are closed. And yet that rave is sufficient grounds to go ahead and say, oh, she's vadai tamei, and let's burn the truma. So 1 rave, you don't need 2 raves. That's another thing. Support of Zeta, that the doors and the gates of the city are closed. So Isha, the chidal in the uladam, it's like the gates of the city are closed. That means that you lock out the second rave. There's only one, there's nobody coming in from outside. Here also, there's no blood by a woman. It's either the aliyah or the mocker. It's not from anywhere else. So interesting in okay. What do you mean? Rabbu just said that the Reivu Motzah is unique. It's different than a normal case of Reiv because you have 2 factors. So what is good of Zayda? Of Zayda about a normal case of Reiv. You have 9 kosher stores and 1 treifa store. That's a normal case of Reiv. How can Rabbu use the case of a woman to support Rab Zayda when here you have 2 variables that support you and there's only 1? Everything. Rabbi finally listened to Abaya and he changed his mind. He agreed with Abaya that the good raya Rav is stronger than Kodesh. So Itma we learned. It seems the machlekes amaroim. This whole concept of chanin is machlekes amaroim. We learned you found a barrel floating on the water. Rav says it depends where you found it. Nimtzas keneged ir sheruba Yisrael. He found it next to a city where the majority of people are eating muteris. It is muter. Why? We're going to say it came from here. Because this Keneged, why? Because this is Kodev. Kodev is right here. Keneged Ir Sheruba Nachrim. Sorry, we're talking about barrel wine. You say Ainesef Stamyenim, or can you drink it as kosher wine? We'll say the majority of people, you found it in the city, and majority of people here are eating, so we'll say that it came from here, Kodev. But Ir Sheruba Nachrim, if it came from the city, the majority of people are Goyim, we'll say that it's Asr. He said it's Asa. So Shmuel comes along and says, even if you found it in the city, in the vicinity where most of the people are Yidden, but nevertheless, Asura. Why is it Asura? Because how do you look at the right? The right people in the world, the right people in the round are Goyim. So you found a barrel, you can't just assume.
And so from the water. It's in the water.
Okay, right? True, but but it could have been brought. But also it could have been transported here as well, even not on the water over land. So Eimer let's say Shmuel saying maybe it came from a hide across. It came from a city called Kara. Came from another city altogether. So what's the machlek is it? Let us say that Rab and Shmuel are arguing in the din of Chanina. The Madi said Rab does not hold it of Chanina. He holds Kodev is stronger than Rav. If it's found in the Jewish vicinity, it came from a Yid. And Omar Shmuel and Shmuel holds like a Chanina. That's what that Rav. We go after Rav. In this case, it works out the wrong way. It works out that it's us. That's what they're arguing. I can argue, I can argue, everyone agrees with Chanina, but here the machlek is as follows. The Marasava, Im Isa, the one, not everyone agrees you go after Rav versus Kodev, but in this case, Ram says there's no Rav. There is no Rav. What about the people, the rest of the world? The river there had rocks and everything in the river, so we don't believe that it can come from far away because it would have got trapped in the rocks that would hold it back. It would never came down here. If it came down here intact, it must be that's from here. So the Rav says here the circumstances prove that it's Kodev. They would have broken the barrel, would have drowned, never would have reached there, never would have arrived here. But Shmuel says, there is a possibility, it's still a possibility that it could come far away. That it fell in the middle of the river and the strength of the rapids of the water carried it here in the middle, because usually the rocks are on the sides. But here, the water was so strong, the jet stream of water was so strong that it pulled it along the center of the river, and therefore it's possible it came there. So there's a possibility that it could come from outside, and therefore we go back to the rule of Rav and Kodev, we follow Rav. Vasai was brought here. So interesting machlekes are showing. We spoke yesterday about the Kodev Hamuchach and Kodev Ein Hamuchach. So we spoke yesterday. So the way Taisus and many of the Shayim learn is that Chanina holds that even a cut of the muchach, even when it's obvious that it's so close, it's right here, nevertheless, Rav is stronger. That's what we learned yesterday. But the Rambam paskins, that if it's a cut of the muchach, we go after the korev, not after the Rav, which means that the Rambam understood that Rav argues with Rab Chanina in a case. Yesterday we said that the Rab only argued the case with Karav Leinemuch. The Rambam learns that the Rab argued Chanina in a Karav de Muchach. That means where it's obvious that it's Karav, then we'll say that is probably a Yid, which is like in the case of the barrel of wine. It's in this vicinity here. It's a Karav de Muchach. In other words, what happens? The barrel of wine is right in front of the Goyish house in this Jewish city, like Rav just said, but Rav doesn't go into the houses. What happens is right in the front, on the jetty of a Yiddish house. Yes, there's one guy living there. So why don't we say it's a Goyish if you follow the law of the Karav? Because that's a Karav de Muchach. Because water floats. Things move in the water. Karav de Muchach is that it came generally from this area, which is the Yiddish city. So Rav holds that we go after Karav. When do we go after Karav versus Arayv? When it's a Karav de Muchach. And that's how the Rambam paskins. But if it's a Karav de Muchach, then we go after Arayv. There was a barrel of wine. This is a very astonishing cases that we'll have to learn inside in a minute. There was a barrel of wine that was found in Pardis in a wine in a vineyard of Pardis de Arla, in a part of a vineyard of Arla. And the question is, was this wine produced from this vineyard, so therefore it's Arla, or do we say it came from somewhere else? Most vineyards are not Arla. So what is it? Shaya Ravina said it's all right. You must be hold like Chanina since you go up to the Raiv. And the Raiv are not Arla. Even though it's Karav right here, was a no Raya. Shiny Hossam, over here, the Karav is unlikely that it's from here. For the if the owner of the vineyard had no idea, we should ask the owner of the vineyard, what's the story, what's the status of this barrel? We know right away, kosher, not kosher. The owner of the vineyard has no idea where the barrel came from. Maybe it's from his vineyard, but it would have been stolen. He doesn't know anything about it. So we say the logic says the mignev, it would have been stolen. It's you don't hide the barrel of wine where you stole it from. If it was stolen from here, they would have hid it somewhere else. If they hid it here, it probably came from somewhere else, and that's where it comes. The honey mil chamra wine. But had it been you found a cluster of grapes, then we can very well say it came from this vineyard. For some reason or other, grapes you don't mind hiding where it is. Maybe that's what it is. A cluster of grapes. Maybe that's the logic behind it. And therefore, we're chayshish that maybe it's early. You shouldn't eat the grapes. You shouldn't eat the grapes. Chayshish says, let's say, what do you call it? You hide it. Let's say possibility you hide it here. But just as well, it could be from abroad. So you have Rav and Karav here. Okay, Karav that maybe was stolen from here and you hid it over here. But you have Rav. We just said the halach is Rav is stronger than Karav. So why can the gray how can eat it? Or maybe or whatever the story is, why can we go ahead and use it? He says here. He's saying another question. Even if you say that since the majority you're saying that maybe it came from other place that was not Arla. Remember the case of wine. Maybe it came from Ray that was not Arla, and we should be able to eat it. So Tess asks a question: if it came from abroad, because of the Ray, most people are going. So it's not Arla. We got a bigger problem. It might be Yain Esech. Well, why are we allowed to eat it? So Tess answers. Tess looked at his answer. The Rave Ganve Yisrael. That most Ganavim.
I was going to say.
You thought you added that. Yeah, but we're seeing about but over here, Chase is used as a general rule.
It's an maybe that case we're talking about.
There's another gives. No, he said no. You go Ruba de Alma. We had before lazy Basaruba. The most question before was, if you remember yesterday, lazy Basaruba de Alma. Let's go to the majority of the world. We don't. Where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? You don't draw the line. There's another gift that I don't like, which is Rav Yisrael Ganva. But here's Rav Ganva Yisrael. Anyway, then you want to continue another story. How does there with these barrels of wine? There were these barrels of wine that they found, but it's not barrels. These are little like canteens, small little pouches, leather pouches of wine that was found in a place called Kapai, Bekapai. And they found it hidden there in the vineyard of a Yiddish place. Shardino Rava said, yeah, go ahead and drink it. Because Karav. It doesn't hold Chanina says that you go after the Rav. He doesn't hold that. Obviously, right? People in the world, are here we're talking about the Yain Esech, which is we look at the world, not just that place. So he's not holding Chanina. Otherwise, we just answered that place wrong. He doesn't hold Chanina because Chanina says go after the Rav, not to Karav. So he has a shiny house, and there's different. The Ruba the who behaves this way? Goyim don't put wine a little thing. They drink a whole big flask. Yidden are the ones who put a little bit from the Chayim, exactly. We didn't mashkas is the story, but wine we don't drink. We're not big wine drinkers. Okay, that's it. Exactly. So the honey mealy. When is it talking about beravrid? When is this talking about that? That what talking about? These are big. These are nevertheless big noises, and therefore we don't think it came from over somebody far away, brought and transported it. We can't as drove by and fell off his camel because when you're driving and you're taking big ones, you take big barrels. You don't take millions, or you take very small ones. They take small ones in travel. The Rebbe is talking about these nightmares, even though they're nightmares, they are a bit bigger than just little colors, they're a bit bigger. And people generally don't travel with these kind of nightmares. Abo Zutzer, but if they're small, very small, Amo, I don't know, it's a chash, or maybe it came from a passerby, you shouldn't drink it. But the Ikar Rabbi Badayon, and you see next to it lying there, some big ones and small ones, we're going to say that it all came from the same source and it didn't come from the foreigners. And why Taka do they have small ones? So because you have to balance the weight. If you go on an airplane and they tell you don't move your seat because we made a cheshbon that so many people are sitting on this side of the plane and so many on that side, and you'll tilt the weight. Like donkey, the same thing. What happens? They have one barrel that's heavier than another barrel. They would add some small noidos on the bottom to level out the weight. So if you see big ones, then we'll assume that the small ones came from the same place. The Gemara, Eimu Ba'avrudi have a mantle, paid there for weights. Said the Mishnah further, talking about distance, the type talking about how much you should distance yourself and not cause harm to someone else. Marchikin as a ilim in the ear, you should distance trees from a city, Esrim b'chamesh amma, a distance of 25 ammas. Why? To beautify the city. Interesting how the Gemara's attitude in that time was having trees. It mars the look of the city. Today, we'd love to see some more greenery and parks and everything else. In those days, trees. We'll see in a minute, yeah. But that's not 25 amas. That's 1,000 amas.
What a city was in those days. It was a few houses together with alleyways. That's not a big thing.
We actually had an area in the definition of a city in the mission. That's a chotzer. There had to be spilling into a mother. You have to have in the end of Berichin, we talk about the laws of Migdash and Sada and all that. Big machlekes in the Rashi and Rambam. But only merely 25 amos. Over the trees have lots of branches and leaves, then 50 amos. You need 50 amos. Maybe the problem is when it comes to winter and all these leaves fall down and make a mess. Abba Shol, we'll see some. Abba Shol, however, says, Kol Ilan Sodak, any tree, if it's barren, 50 amos. Don't have it too close to the city. It doesn't in any way enhance the city. Now, this whole inyan about beautifying a city and everything else, big machlekes in the Rishonim, and Rashi says here a few times, it's because of Yishuv, it's only Eretz Yisrael. Because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, we have a duty to make Eretz Yisrael look as pretty as possible. We hadn't ending Merksubas, you're not saying anything derogatory, the sun and the shade and all that. You're not saying anything derogatory, it's cold. You should say anything derogatory Eretz Yisrael. Other Rishonim that Ameh learns clearly that it's a din in the world, it's an obligation on everybody in the community to beautify your city, and those has nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael. In Chutz La'aretz is exactly the same thing. If the city was built first and then a guy came along to the trees, you shut them down. They don't have to compensate him at all. You had no right to put the tree in the first place. If the trees were already there, we decided to build a city here, then nevertheless kaitzes, you always chop it down because Yishuv is more important, supersedes trees and all that. But the nice in this case, you need to compensate them. Suffolk, we're not sure. So either way, you have to cut down the tree. The question is, do we have to pay the person or not? We don't know if the tree came first or the tree came afterwards. Nobody remembers. Then Kaiti chop the tree down. Now he wants money. You don't pay. Setting out of my time, but what's the logic behind all this? Here we want the city to look nice. But this was your question. But let's learn the ain't oisin today Migdash relay Migdash sada that you don't ain't sada Migdash. You have 1,000 amas outside of the city that you have to leave void, which is Migdash. Then you have the next 1,000 amas where you plant. You have Zeraim and everything else. So the first 2,000 amas, this is Harashlan, it's 1,000. The first 2,000 amas, we have rules. So when you tell me 25 amas, 1,000 amas, you have to leave in Migrash. You have to leave it vacant. So the Gemara lights. We're following Rabbi Lezer. In other words, Rabbi Lezer says that it's only Ore Levim that we have this din, not all other cities, and therefore, according to him, you can have it as you can do whatever you want outside the perimeters of the city. So we're saying by the first 25 amas, keep your distance. The Gemara says the Labrador Isis saw the Midrash right saw the and how over here Mishum Noyer Loyav Dinan Ula Rabbanan Nami L'Chayre according to Rabbanan. Is there any purpose in telling us this halacha about 25 amas? Says Gemara even Rabbanan. Why the Rabbanan Nami the Amar Ein Isis saw the Midrash le Midrash saw the they say that what any city at least in Eretz Yisrael according to Rashi Hani Mili Zeroyim. But we don't want you to plant in the first 1,000 amas. And trees don't in any way overturn or transform a midrash into something else. And over here, the city, I want you to keep a distance of 25 amas. How do we know that Zeroyin you're allowed to plant the first 1,000 amas, but trees you're allowed to? Why should it be different between planting trees or planting Zeroyin? How do you know the shine is a chilik being Zeroyin and Ilanis? Said you want to Tanya. We learned in Hilchos Shabbos that if you have an area the size of the Mishkan, which is 50 amas, is 2 saw, so 50 amas by 100, that's called a karfif. And a karfif, if it's larger than 2 saw, then it depends. Are you allowed to carry in that closed area? So it depends. If it's hukif ledira, if there's a house there and the purpose is to surround the house, and we don't care how large the karfif is, you can carry. But if it's loy hukif ledira, when it was built originally, it had nothing to do with dira, it's keep animals out or whatever it is. It's loy hukif ledira, you have a botanical garden and you put a fence around it. If it's loy hukah l'dida, then if it's greater than 2 saw, you're not allowed to carry there on Shabbos. You only carry 4 amas. So what happens? You have a big area, a carver, everything else. The time you learn carver yosef beisasayim, so hukah l'dida, right? Everything good, but then nizla rubai, you went and planted. And now that planting upsets this carpet. Harei kedina. You've transformed the whole place. And we learned that in Hilchos Eruvin, you have all of these things that's Zeroyim inside the Eruv can transform the whole thing. That's why you have to isolate the Zeroyim. Botanical gardens inside an enclosed area if it's alive, if it's greater than 2 saw. If Asr is Asr, that's if you plant Zeroyim. Aber Nita Ruba, if you planted trees, it still remains a chatzah. The trees do not take away the status of the original place. So the same thing by a migdash, you can plant trees. Second, if the tree was considering the first, you cut down the tree, you don't compensate the person. We'll learn later on by a boy, and we already had this 3 times. Say that you're not allowed to plant a tree within 25 amas next to your neighbor's boy. The Tony, it says there, and if you plant a tree, if the boy was there first, if the tree was there first, you cut down the tree, but you have to compensate. The nice and dummy. Why over here? It says very nice and dummy. Sorry, it says over there if the tree was the first, you don't cut it down at all. But if the tree came after the bird, the neighbor built a bird, then you built a tree. So the din over there is we cut down the tree, but the owner of the bird has to compensate you because it's a big hefsek, it's a big loss. So how come we don't have to compensate here when the guy planted a tree illegally by a city? We don't compensate. Why not? So Kana said the famous words. Amar of Kana said, if you have a pot that you have that 2 chefs are cooking together, each person thinks that they know how to do it, or they rely on the other person, so it won't be hot, it won't be cold, it'll be a disaster. Because when you can rely on somebody else, then everyone relies that the other person probably will do the right thing. This one will put the salt in, this guy said, this guy will put the spices in, and then no one ends up doing anything. That's what I've kind of said. Freddy, I don't understand. My kushi, what's your original question? Dilma shiny has an individual planted tree when you shouldn't have, Bitaka shouldn't have, but you still have to compensate him. But if you're going to put a tree there and you're mazi the rabbi, you take away the beauty of the city, the facade of the city there, why should you get compensated? Why should the rabbi pay you? You did the wrong thing you impacted a rabbi. What's the question in the first place? Rav Kana's word is actually regarding the sake. What's that? If the tree was first, the tree was planted legally, still you cut it down, the nice and you have to pay money. So why can't he say, look, I planted the tree legally, you just had to make a city here. Compensate me first, and then you cut my tree down. I don't trust you. I'm going to have to chase you around to get my money. But why can we label the Havali Beresha? Give me my money. But how do I? Because they cut. The reason is because it's not going to be easy to get the money. And if we're going to have to pay you first before we cut the tree down, it could take years before you pay you. Because each person in the town will say, you're the rich one, you pay the money. And then nobody pays, and either we have a tree. And it mars the beauty of the city. And there's an obligation that everybody in the city should make sure that the city looks beautiful. So we'll cut the tree down first, and then we'll go, the worst you go to Dintayim.
Too many cooks spoil the broth.
Exactly. Some of the cutters, you cut it down. I mean, if you don't know, but you don't compensate. By a boy down, you say, we don't know if the tree was first or not. We said, don't cut the tree down. Here, we'll cut the tree down and you don't pay. Why? Horsing was very simple. Horsing if we knew for a fact that the tree was planted before the guy put the boy, you don't cut the tree down. Now that there's a suffix, what do? So we don't proactively cut the tree down. So you don't know. Maybe the tree taco was there before the boy. People don't remember. Here, regardless of the tree was planted before the city or the city came first, it makes no difference. We'll always cut the tree down. The only difference is money. So therefore, we also cut it down. I said, money. You bring it out, you'll get your money. Next Mishnah, you have to distance, let's say, a silo or a threshing floor 50 amas from the city, because otherwise the leaf, the things, the what it goes. The parts of the thing that get the winnowing goes flying around, and it ruins other people's plants. So you have to keep it this is 50 amas. The wind won't blow further than 50 amas. You shouldn't plant a goy and kavua inside your own. Elim get permanent one. Yes, on every side you have 50 amas for that very reason from your neighbors as well. Then the Mishnah finishes off, which is the problem. How far away should you be from the plants, from the trees of your friend? From his plowed field. There's no room. Everything is relative, based on each other's merits. You shouldn't cause any damage, which sounds like a lot less than 50 amas. What changed? Before you say 50 amas, absolute rule, and now you tell me, well, it depends if it will cause damage or not. I want to buy a safe for us. We're talking about a goydin which is not permanent. You just decide to use it today. Okay, then if it's 10 amas, it's 10 amas. But what's the definition of a goydin which is not kavua, a threshing floor which is not permanent? You don't need that special implement, special tool to go do the winnowing. That means it's not really. If you had a permanent thing, you take a lot at a time, and you would have the special rake or whatever it is to throw up in the air. But here, you don't have that special tool because it's only a little bit, ad hoc. Rabashi says, no, it's not two parts of the Mishnah. We're not talking about two different dinim. Ma tam kama. The Mishnah is explaining why 50 amas. My time of machik and goyim kavua meniyach hamishim amma. Why do you have to distance 50 amas? You shouldn't call it damage. Mesa has a question. Machik and it says, but I said, go meniyach hamishim amma. Ukeshem shemachik meniyach hamishim amma. 50 amas. Kach machik medluya mikishuya mityosav. You distance yourself from the melons and the cucumbers and from the trees. Umeniyach from the plowed land. Hamishim amma kadesh yazik. In order, you should do hezek. So still 50 amas. We don't say based on the merits, always 50 amas, but he adds in order not to, giving a reason. So the Mishnah by it's exactly how we live out the Mishnah. It's always 50 amas, and the reason is you're kunhezing. Every single thing should be different, depending on what will cause damage or not. So the Gemara kasha, it's not a problem, but doesn't deter a buyer. We understand the problem there is that the wind will come, that the wind will come, pick up the dust and go into the heart, into the tvu itself, into these things, what you're growing. Umotzele, and it's common. El menire, neither means that you plowed the land and it's just lying there fallow. Amai, so what's the problem? What are you going to do? You didn't plant yet. What happens is you give too much fertilizer because all these leaves that are flying in the air will land there and they turn into fertilizer. And the field that has too much fertilizer dries up all the seeds and it doesn't grow any better. The fertilizer is very important, but you have to know everything is measured has to be measured. Okay, a good Shabbos.